Flory coming into 2025 is going to have an opportunity to play his way and to do the things that we know he can do. And then again, you pair that with somebody like Darren Peterson, where he's going to have a chance to be an excellent rim threat. He's going to have a chance to be, as you said, a true anchor of the defense for Kansas. And pay heed, all who enter, and beware of this podcast. That's right. This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, along with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible, member FDIC. And we have more breaking news as we record on Sunday afternoon. This is some very significant news. We touched on a little bit in our last breaking news show about this possibility. And sure enough, Sunday afternoon, Pete Thamel reported it first. Flory Bidunga is going to return to Lawrence as a member of the Kansas Jayhawks in 2025. Some absolutely massive news. I know, Kevin, in the immediate aftermath of the news, you had texted me and said that you felt that this was bigger news maybe than anything else Kansas could have done, and bigger news than so many players that could have been on the transfer portal. You know, we talked about it when Flory entered the transfer portal, that what are the odds you're going to be able to find a player that can equal his caliber or equal what his ceiling could be? Very, very low. So this was obviously a massive, recommitment for Kansas to get to bring Flory back, because he looked like he was going to be the cornerstone of this team going into 2025 alongside Darren Peterson. He leaves, that throws things into disarray, or I guess doesn't leave, enters the transfer portal. That throws things into disarray. There was kind of that weird wording when he entered the transfer portal about, it actually came from Pete Thamel as well, that Kansas remained a strong possibility of returning. And sure enough, Flory Bidunga is not leaving. He is staying in Lawrence. He's going to play another season to Kansas. And we're going to be breaking that all down on this show today. As always, if you have not subscribed, please do so. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. Drop a comment, like the show, and subscribe so you know when breaking news happens, because we'll be talking about it and you can see it there. And also on our audio platforms, Apple, Spotify. If you haven't already, subscribe there as well. Make sure you're notified when our shows go up on the audio side. Also, leave 5-star rating and review. Tons of ways to stay in contact with the show. Kevin, I kind of wanted to attack this from two different angles. The first angle being just what it means for Kansas, right? I mean, obviously, this is very, very significant for KU. We had talked about the tantalizing possibility of Flory and Darren Peterson playing together. Then it was sort of all came crashing down when Flory decided to enter the transfer portal, and things were very much up in the air. But in the end, he's coming back. I mean, what's your initial reaction to this news? And I mean, how excited are you about this possibility now?
Well, my initial reaction, I think, was let's go. And I think the funny thing is, Nick, I actually got messages from a few friends who were in NBA draft circles that were not KU fans, but were very excited about this because of the possibility of getting to see Flory over the next year with Darren Peterson. And they were just kind of like, man, can you imagine pick and rolls with Darren Peterson and Flory being the lob threat? And I was like, absolutely, I can imagine that. But I think we've talked about on the show, Nick, one of the things there are multiple reasons this is such a great deal. One is, like we've talked about so many times, Nick, you want some continuity, right? You want some guys back that understand the system, understand what's expected of them, that are familiar with the coaching staff, familiar with going to school at KU and all the things that go along with that. The other thing, though, Nick, is as much of a talisman or foundational piece as Darren Peterson is, especially I think we're expecting him to be sort of the point of the spear offensively, I felt like Flory was supposed to be that defensively. And when you look at what Kansas has kind of struggled with the last few years in terms of, hey, when Hunter Dickinson is asked to high hedge, and this isn't necessarily a knock on him, it's just lacks the lateral quickness to rebound and get back under the basket. All of a sudden, there's nothing off the table defensively now because Flory is there. He's a guy that can protect the rim and be a traditional shot blocker. He's also somebody that's athletic enough that he can come out and hedge and still rally back to the initial guy under the post. Nick, this is the guy that I think, as much as we talk about Darren Peterson making this offense go, I think that Flory is going to be the guy that makes this defense go for the Jayhawks in 2025, 2026.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, we got a little bit of a taste of his shot blocking ability and his defensive ability, I think, in his freshman season, and we had talked about it. I mean, I expect Flory to take a jump in
Yeah.
2025, especially under Bill Self and especially with a guy like Darren Peterson. And we're now talking about Kansas having 2 NBA caliber players. And I think when you
First round caliber players. Yeah.
exactly. And you know, you obviously have compiled some various different stats about, hey, what do teams normally have when they make runs in the NCAA tournament, right? And a lot of times it's guys returning starters, continuity, or things like that. Well, something that's always different to me is you can point at a lot of teams and say, hey, this team had multiple NBA caliber players on that team. And now Kansas absolutely checks that box with the presumed top 2 or 3 pick with Darren Peterson and a guy in Flory Bidunga that absolutely, depending on the season he has, could be another top 10, 15 pick probably, right? I mean, the couple games that he really flashed during this season in his freshman year, some draft boards had him up there, just based off of a small sample size of him flashing in a couple of games. And as I started to reflect more on this past season for Flory Bidunga and sort of the ups and downs of his freshman year, right? KJ gets hurt, he comes in, plays a little bit more, plays well, then kind of stagnates a little bit and didn't get to perform, I think, as much down the stretch of the season. I kind of circle back to this idea that we talked about a lot on the show, which is, the pieces last year just didn't fully quite fit together, right?
Yeah.
And I think from Flory's perspective last season, the more I kind of thought about it is Flory in a lot of situations, whether it was paired with Hunter Dickinson, paired with KJ Adams, he was asked to do a lot of different things and play in a lot of different ways, and not always in necessarily maybe a way that I think is the way that he would want to play or that could maximize his ceiling as a player. This year, he is absolutely going to have that opportunity. He's going to be able to play exactly how he wants to play, and he's going to be really unimpeded in playing his way of how he wants to go about things. Because when Hunter Dickinson's on the floor, he just creates a gravity of that kind of requires guys to play certain ways around him, right? And with KJ Adams and some of his limitations as a shooter, and obviously he's a great passer and other things, but same deal. I think it forces guys to play certain ways, and I think now Flory coming into 2025 is going to have an opportunity to play his way and to do the things that we know he can do. And then again, you pair that with somebody like Darren Peterson, where he's going to have a chance to be an excellent rim threat. He's going to have a chance to be, as you said, a true anchor of the defense for Kansas. And that's probably the biggest point I think is in that. And I think you're smarter than I am at this stuff. So you pointed it out first, but on the defensive side, a lot of Kansas' best defenses have had a rim protecting big man, right? Or a guy that anchors the middle of the defense. And absolutely Flory, I think, has a chance to be that as well, which, again, maybe the most significant thing of this whole situation, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the most valuable player that Kansas had in 2020 was Udoka Azubuike, and it wasn't necessarily just the fact that, hey, this guy can catch the ball in the paint, put both feet in the ground and then put his elbows on the rim. It was more defensively, right? Nobody could get anything around the rim, and I think Flory, I don't want to say, hey, he's going to be as impactful as the most impactful player in college basketball that season. But I do think that he's somebody that, in addition to that shot blocking ability, you can do different things with him defensively, where he can be sort of the backbone to an elite defense. And that 2020 team, I think all of us, remember that team really fondly. They never played in the NCAA tournament because of COVID and all of those things. They kind of, I don't want to say scored just enough, but offense wasn't perfect for that team, right? Like, they didn't have a ton of shooting on that team. They were a team that would defend their absolute butts off, though, and then they could kill you in transition. Especially, I mean, Devon Dotson was a one-man fast break, basically, when he got the ball into his hands. This is a team, Nick, that I think fits, without knowing the full makeup of the team, I think with those two pieces, you're kind of building a similar way, right? In terms of probably having an All-America type scoring point guard. I think Peterson will probably be better than Devon Dotson, certainly more varied than Devon Dotson in what he's able to do. Having Flory underneath the basket, you're building it in sort of a similar way, I think, to that 2020 team. Now, if you make it to where Flory gets to operate with spacing around the basket, which he didn't have last year, to your point. The other thing, Nick, we've talked about on the show, guys make their biggest leap from their freshman to their sophomore seasons. And I thought Flory showed enough flashes offensively that I think that he's had a chance to be a pretty good offensive player. Yeah, he can jump up over the top of somebody and be a lob threat. But I think some of the things that were most impressive were when he caught the ball with his back to the basket, he was able to kind of slither underneath somebody or kind of drop step and get angles as he adds more strength, as he goes through a full off season. I think you're going to see him be more of an offensive threat as well as what he's able to supply defensively. And you made a great point about the NBA stuff. Nick, since the ABA-NBA merger, so like back in, I think it was like 75, 76, no team has won a national title without a top 30 pick. And most of them have had multiple top 30 picks, like the vast majority of them. And so the easiest way to win a national title, put a lot of talent on the floor and specifically have a couple really high-end guys. I think Flory coming back, Darren Peterson coming in, you have that part of sort of that equation checked off.
And most importantly, I think also, as Kansas does continue to literally build this roster, we're still talking about having 5-6 open spots in the transfer portal. Yep. You now have a very, very solid groundwork to go and pitch more players and say, hey, look, there was some uncertainty, but we've got it ironed out. You're going to have a chance to play with a top 2-3 NBA prospect, plus a really talented big man as well. Like this adds, I think, more to Kansas' selling point to more guys in the transfer portal to say, this is what we're building. We're on a mission. At Kansas, the expectation is always very high, and if you come here with us, you're gonna have a chance to achieve that with the players that we already have with Flory and Darren Peterson and even like a Trey White as well. Also, so I think that really adds to Kansas's stability, and now they can start to really move forward. I don't know if Kansas was maybe distracted a little bit with the Flory situation from the transfer portal because of the fact that they were obviously trying to keep him and eventually did, but that's something to consider, I guess, as well. But certainly this gives them a little bit a much more stronger level of a foundation to work with going forward in the transfer portal, which, by the way, if you did miss our conversation about Trey White and Jaden Dawson, Kansas' 2 commits, definitely encourage you to go check out that show that we recorded over the weekend, earlier in the weekend, talking about those guys. So as I said, I wanted to talk about this from kind of 2 different angles. We covered the first angle here with Kansas. I wanted to talk about it from a different angle coming up on the other side. We're going to take a quick break. And of course, you know what that means. We get a chance to tell you about Home Field Apparel. You can shop Home Field Apparel at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code PAY24. I'm rocking the Kansas Relays shirt with the Warhawk logo on it.
Kansas Relays coming up.
Kansas Relays are coming up. They are in, I think, 2 weeks, actually. Yeah. I believe they're in 2 weeks. So, yeah. It's exciting times. And of course, you can support the Kansas Relays. You can support Kansas. You can support 140 other schools at homefieldapparel.com. Just as long as you use that promo code PAY24, 15% off your first order. And more Flory talk is coming up next. Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win real money this March? Struggling to choose which team will pull off an upset? Well, forget all about the teams. All you need to focus on are player stats to rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. And when it comes to massive payouts, DraftKings dunks all over the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. You can track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes. And it's really as simple as that, folks. You can turn your basketball knowledge into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, along with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible, member FDIC. As I said before the break, if you want to hear a little bit more of a deeper breakdown of Trey White and Jaden Dawson, Kansas's 2 latest commits out of the transfer portal, highly encourage you to go check out our show talking about those guys from earlier in the weekend. Today, we're talking about Flory Bidunga and his return to Kansas after entering the transfer portal and then ultimately deciding to come back. That news coming out on Sunday afternoon via Pete Thamel, and it confirmed by various outlets as well. So Flory Bidunga is going to be back in Kansas, back in Lawrence, playing for Kansas coming up in 2025. Talked about it from the Kansas side. Obviously, it's a huge boon for Kansas, right? I mean, this is a guy that has an extremely high ceiling that we got a little bit of a taste of, I think, at times in his freshman season. And as we've talked about, we expect him to take a jump, I think, in 2025 as well. I kind of wanted to flip over to the other side of this, though, Kevin. And this, to be quite honest, was quite a dramatic, I guess, re-recruitment, if that's what you want to call it, with the news of him entering the transfer portal. I think kind of catching a little bit of some people by surprise, and then ultimately deciding to come back. And that kind of opens up the conversation of, is this something that becomes more commonplace, right? I mean, I think certainly the financial aspect played a role in this sort of drama as it played out, where, you know, Flory and his team felt like there was a chance he could make more money, right? And I think that was part of it. And Kansas, obviously, I'm sure, had to up whatever their NIL valuation was to get him to return. That was certainly a large factor. So that played a role in it as well. And I don't know, it's just something I kind of wanted to open up to you a little bit about what this means, and maybe from Flory's perspective coming back, and is this something that could become a trend maybe around college basketball? I don't know. Do you have any takeaways from that aspect of it with how this ultimately kind of played out?
Yeah, people have to be careful about it, right? Because it's kind of one of those things, you know, if you're starting a war with somebody, you don't go straight to the nuke, right? And entering the transfer portal, I feel like, is dropping the nuke, so to speak. And so I think it's a tool, Nick, and you could see it happen more often, where people say, you know what, valuation isn't what I want. I think I can get a better valuation elsewhere, and or ramp up my valuation, you know, with my current school by going into the portal. But I also think it's really easy to burn those bridges if you go out the wrong way, and if you enter the portal the wrong way, where maybe you do want to come back to school, and maybe you do want to say, hey, I want to be a Jayhawk. I want an extra zero or an extra $500,000 or whatever, however you want to put it. I do think that there's a risk inherent with it on both sides, right? Like from a school standpoint, you don't necessarily want a guy entering the portal because, I mean, don't get me wrong, players are being tampered with right now, but you open that thing up and it gives somebody a really great chance to be like, hey, if you're getting paid $1 million, like, we value you as like a $2.5 million player. Like, that's way more than what you would get there. And you could lose that guy. From a player's standpoint, if you want to go back to that school, if that's potentially something you want to do, you really risk alienating the staff that recruited you, the people who have poured time into you, etc. In this case, it seems like it worked out for all parties, right? And it did wind up working out. And I do think, to your original question, Nick, I do think this is something that we could see more often, where somebody is, say, mostly entrenched at Auburn, but they're kind of like, they're not quite hitting my dollar figure. I'll enter the portal and that'll get Auburn up their money, and then I'll come back. I would just warn both the school and the player that it may seem like a great idea. It may have worked in this instance, but I don't necessarily know that that's the ideal plan of attack, because I think it's really easy for either the school to lose the player because other people are going to say, hey, we'll give this guy exactly what he wants and more, or from the player's standpoint of you really have a chance of maybe making some people mad around the program that you want to come back to. And so I do think that it's something that could happen more often. Maybe it should be a little bit more of kind of a last resort where it's like, well, I think we can get us there, but also, I'm willing to walk away if it doesn't get there.
I mean, this is just another example of absolutely no guardrails on the process, right?
Sure.
Which really muddies it up. And I think, unfortunately for Kansas in this situation, metaphorically speaking, they could not afford to lose Flory Bidunga. I mean, we just talked about it. When he did enter the portal, how big of a blow it was, and how it was certainly likely Kansas was not going to be able to find a player equal to that caliber, or maybe even close. So
Flory had the cards, as they say,
yeah,
in this specific case, for sure.
But again, even with that being said, and in the transfer portal, like you mentioned, I think was a good way to describe it. It really was sort of the final option, right? But this is the final thing that we're going to do to put pressure on the situation. And yeah, it sounds like in the situation, it came down to KU and Auburn. And funnily enough, his high school recruitment came down to KU and Auburn. So Auburn still liked what they saw from Flory, and maybe they could have used him on Saturday night to help them get to the championship game, but not the case, Bruce Pearl. Sorry, not the case. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. I mean, it just goes to show that this really is a situation where across the college athletics landscape, there's just not much protection in any direction, right? Like
for anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great.
Like players can easily get screwed over. And I think we've seen that programs can get screwed by tampering from other schools and so on and so forth. Like it is in a lot of ways a one big giant mess. And in this case, I think it did work out for Kansas. It was more stressful and certainly probably cost them more money. But I think in this particular situation, they probably are okay with that considering the circumstances, right? Like you are trying to put together a team around Darren Peterson for this one shot. Darren Peterson is going to be a one and done. So you have one chance to put together a quality team around him and try to make a run, try to be like a Duke with Cooper Flagg and go to the Final Four with a top 1-2 caliber NBA draft prospect. This is your one chance. And Flory far and away gives you the best chance to be successful in that endeavor. And so because of that, as you said, I think Flory did have a little bit more leverage probably in the situation than your average player would. If this was, just player X, whatever, in a different college or a different situation. So maybe that helped him a little bit in terms of coming back. But yeah, Kansas needed him back, and I think everybody's pretty happy with this outcome, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, Nick. Just to pull back the curtains a little bit, I used to do the way too early rankings, like that came out right around the national title game for 24/7, and it was a really involved process. I mean, I talked to NBA scouts, we had so many different team sites that you could call somebody and find out pretty well, like, hey, is this guy going to go? Is this guy probably going to stay, et cetera? There was a lot of expertise there. But the one thing that I would say, Nick, is people look at those rankings that come out, the day of the national title game, or in some cases right after the national title game. We're getting ready to get flooded by them and say, well, so-and-so doesn't look like they have a very complete team. Like, how are they number 4 in the country on this thing? In those way too early rankings, Nick, you're looking for 2 really good pieces. And then maybe a couple other pieces where you're like, hey, this guy could help here or there. And that's what you're looking for from a top 5, top 10 standpoint. That's not even, a team that's on the bottom part of the top 25. And so I'm very interested to see where people have Kansas now that Flory is coming back. But I think, too, my point would be, Nick, if I were still doing those rankings and looking at it at this point in time, you got Darren Peterson, you've got Flory Bidunga on the back end, you've got Elmarco Jackson coming back, you've got the 2 transfer portal guys. I'm not sure Kansas wouldn't be a top 10-ish team right now, even with the holes in that roster. And people are saying, wait a minute, you don't even know who half your roster is. At this point right now, where we're at, heading into the national title game, that's really what you're looking for, is 2 really good pieces and then maybe another piece or two that you can project. And I think Kansas, all of a sudden, where they weren't 4 days ago, even all of a sudden now they're tracking where it's like, well, okay, this is kind of a lot more where you want to be at this time of year.
I think I speak for a lot of Kansas fans, Kevin, when I say just please don't put Kansas
No number.
Just please don't put KU number one. I'm begging you. Like, I don't care if Kansas has the greatest transfer portal haul of all time. They've got, an NBA team suited up in Lawrence. Just
Steph Curry still got eligibility. He's coming to Kansas.
Just don't rank them number one at any point, please. I'm begging you. Please do not rank them number one. That's my only request as this process continues. But as you said, we're right in the midst of the Final Four, the national championship game. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that and get some of your thoughts on that, and maybe some takeaways possibly that could be applied to Kansas heading into 2025. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll take a little bit of a step back and look at the Final Four and the national championship with this weekend. So stay right there, and we'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
This is the Payee Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer along with Kevin Flaherty. If you have not already, what are you doing? Subscribe, like the channel, drop a comment, share your thoughts. You can do it on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts on the audio side. And of course, on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks, KCSN. Thanks so much to those of you that have already done so. We really appreciate all of our commenters as well. Thank you so much to you guys for interacting with the show and taking some time to hang out with us. It means a lot. So really appreciate you. Spent a lot of time talking about the breaking news on Sunday afternoon with Flory Bidunga announcing that he's going to be returning to Kansas. Certainly huge news. It was something that we had suggested in a previous show was a possibility. Didn't feel like it was a guarantee, but Kansas does get their guy to stay in Lawrence. And again, really gives KU two really strong pieces now going forward as they continue in the transfer portal, still needing to add probably another 5 to 6 players. So you'll want to stay subscribed and stay tuned in. So for breakdowns as players continue to trickle in through the transfer portal for Kansas. But we're recording on Sunday, so Saturday afternoon, evening, we watched the Final Four games, and now the national championship is set. On a sad note, Kevin, in the post-game interview, Houston defeats Duke in very eerily similar fashion to another game that they won earlier in the season. And as it was unfolding live,
that would never happen, so I don't know what you're talking about. I went to bed with Kansas up 6 or 8 in the final couple minutes, so I just assumed Kansas won that game. Nothing changed, all right?
As last night was unfolding live before my eyes, I was thinking, oh my God, oh my God, it's going to happen again. And sure enough, it did. Kansas comes back to beat Duke. But then LJ Cryer did not have to rub it in after the fact and say, well, we had a game earlier in the season just like this. It was against Kansas, and they choked it away, and we won. So
just so you know, yeah, in case you didn't make this connection, I'm going to go ahead and connect it for all of you.
Yeah, so that was really tough. I really wish LJ Cryer hadn't said that, but Houston representing the Big 12 well, going on to win that game, and now they'll be in the championship game against Florida and Todd Golden. So that should be a really, really fun game. But yeah, that was a bit of a heartbreaker to watch it unfold in that way. Couldn't have happened to a better team, though. I mean, couldn't have happened to a better team in Duke. Really, really sad to see that happen for Duke. Not at all, actually. I thought it was great. I loved it. I loved seeing it happen against Duke. And the other thing is, I'll listen. Kelvin Sampson said some of this, but I'm going to take it a step further. Kelvin Sampson was talking about the Big 12 also in his post game and about the type of league that the Big 12 plays in. I'm going to take it a step further, Kevin. Duke plays in the candy-ass ACC, the terrible, horrible ACC. It's a JV league. They thought they were hot stuff because they play in just the worst league in America in the ACC. And the Big 12, baby. The Big 12, Houston toughened up. Shout out Coach Yormark. I don't know if you caught that.
I need to ask you this.
Okay.
Do you know how many games Duke played in the ACC this year?
I'm assuming 20.
Yeah. Do you know how many times they lost?
Off the top of my head, I think did they lose 1 or 2 games in ACC play?
Lost once. Do you know how many times they played against Big 12 teams this year?
Twice.
5. They played Arizona twice. They played Baylor in the round of 32, and then
right.
So
I forgot about Baylor.
yeah. So, and lost to KU and Houston. So Duke had more losses to the Big 12 in 5 games than they did in 20 games against ACC competition.
Well, and we've talked about it in Big 12 play, and just kind of generally speaking, I guess, it pays to play tough competition and play close games in the regular season, right? Because it prepares you for the NCAA tournament. It prepares you for those moments. And Duke, let's be honest, every close game they played, they didn't win very many of them. like when they played in close games, they generally lost. So you look at the games they lost, and they were all close games, and you look what they did in the ACC. So it pays to play tough competition in the regular season to prepare you for the NCAA tournament.
I think depth, too, in conferences is so huge. And actually, I can tell you this. Jeremy Clark, who covers TCU for 24/7, he's terrific. He's as tied in as anybody covering TCU. And if you want to know what's ever going on with TCU football or basketball, I highly recommend you follow him. But when TCU first came to the Big 12, we had a conversation, and one of the things that he talked about was he was like, well, TCU did really well against the top teams in the Mountain West. And so he was kind of like, and, we played Wisconsin in the bowl game, like we did well, like we should be able to transition really easily. And I said, honestly, I'm not worried about TCU as much when it comes to playing Texas or Oklahoma or the other top teams in the conference, right? Because TCU was pretty good, and they were going to get up for those games. What worried me more about TCU coming to the Big 12 was, hey, when you're playing the middle of the league, when you're playing the bottom of the league, before that was an automatic win, right? But now, all of a sudden, if you play your C game and you're playing Iowa State, let's say in football, which Iowa State back then wasn't, great, Iowa State's good enough to beat you if you play your C game. And I think if you take that on over to basketball, Nick, how many times have we seen that? Teams that maybe weren't even good enough to reach the NCAA tournament, but man, if you took that night off, you'd go home with a loss. And I think that was the difference between Duke and the ACC. And Duke, was great. Reached the Final Four. Anytime you reach the Final Four, it's a successful season, all those things. But Duke didn't have to get ready to the same extent for the middle and bottom of the league like we talk about with the Big 12, like the SEC was this year, in terms of where you're going to be tested, where if Duke brought their C game against a middle-tier ACC team, they were going to win. If you bring your C game against a middle-tier Big 12 team, I hate to say this, Nick, but Kansas finished 7th out of 16 teams. You're going to lose that game if you bring your C game against a team like a Kansas. And so that is a major difference, just in that it's not just about getting up for the tough games and for, hey, we're playing number 1, we better get ready. The real issue, I think, is, are you going to get to a point where even when you don't have it that night, when your effort isn't quite as good, etc., can you beat a really good team? And Big 12 teams, a team like Houston has to go through that a lot, where it's, Houston almost lost to UCF this year, but found a way to win a really close game late. I'm not sure that Duke had a bad game against a UCF type opponent where they had to grind it out and be like, we don't have it tonight, but we have to find a way in the final couple minutes. Houston, that's when their nails. Duke, it was kind of where that team struggled this year.
Well, and I see a lot of qualities of Kelvin Sampson's team, this Houston team, of KU teams that have been really good, right? Like that's what Kelvin Sampson's team, the qualities that they have are many of the qualities that we praised Kansas teams were having, right? That ability to go on the road and win a game 62-58, win a game in a gritty fashion, come back, and fight back in a game where you're not shooting the ball very well. And obviously it helped that Houston had LJ Cryer, who was just going bananas, especially early in the game. But yeah, there's a lot of qualities there similarly to, and those are championship qualities, right? Those are championship qualities. And I absolutely will be pulling for Houston. I picked Houston. I've been on the Houston train for
I think Florida. So we've got that competition going. Also, Nick, I know nobody wants to hear about brackets, but I am in a bracket contest where I only did one bracket. I don't believe in doing multiple brackets. And I hit on all 8 Elite 8 teams, 3 of the 4 Final Four teams, both teams in national title game. And yet, like, if Florida wins, I will win a gift card to Joe's Kansas City Barbecue, which of course is fantastic. But if Houston wins, the Big 12 wins the title. So it's kind of 1-1 there, where it's kind of like I would love to see Houston win, but also, you know, if you know me, you will know that I rarely bet against barbecue at this point.
Yeah, and it's going to be a challenge for Houston in the national championship because Florida has Walter Clayton, who is the most clutch player I've seen in a long time in the tournament. I mean, it is absolutely absurd what that guy does in clutch moments and making big shots. And so Houston's going to have an answer for that. We'll see. I mean, LJ Cryer, obviously, like I said, was great for Houston against Duke, but it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for sure. But it should be a really exciting championship game. You know, I think this narrative this season of no Cinderellas, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. You know, I think part of it is people thought there would be more Cinderellas because the talent will be more spread out with NIL and whatnot. And while that is kind of true, it's actually the opposite for mid-major schools.
Yeah.
Because if you're good enough to be a star player on a mid-major school, you're probably playing at a low-end Power 5 school or some Power 5 school. And so those mid-major schools just don't have the types of players that would typically be leading them to upsets in the NCAA tournament. Instead, those are at mid-tier Power 5 schools in a lot of cases. So that's why there's been less upsets. But the positive side of the less upsets is we had a fantastic Elite 8. We had 2 fantastic Final Four games, and we're going to have what I anticipate to be one of the better national championship games probably in the past decade or so, to be honest. Which is I guess the positive side of that is you get great basketball in late March and April.
Yeah, I wonder if mid-majors will bounce back after this year when you get like the people with the COVID years out of there too, because I think that a big part of when you talk to college coaches, let's say between 2010 and 2015, and yes, I've been doing this a while. When you talk to them during that period, one of the things that they would say was a major advantage for a mid-major was the age of the roster, right? Like if you were at Kansas or you were at Duke or you were at Kentucky, chances are that you were pursuing one and done type guys. And even if they weren't one and done, maybe they left after 2 years. And so you had younger rosters at those power schools, whereas mid-majors, you know, you had the redshirt senior, you had the guy who had been there for 4 years, et cetera. You know, Steph Curry only played at Davidson, and you know, you look at the Butler group and Gordon Hayward and all of those different things. The age was a big part of it, but with the COVID year combined with the transfer portal, everybody was old. And so I feel like mid-major teams, not only did they lose their more talented guys moving up a level or two, but they also lost the advantage of age because everybody was really old. Now, with the portal still going, Nick, I still think there's a chance for teams to, quote unquote, get old and stay old because you can replace your experience just about every year. But you're also not typically going to have a school that has like a 25-year-old or whatever else. And so I am
Auburn.
I am interested to see over the next few years, kind of if that balances out a little bit. You're still going to have the issue of, hey, if a kid's at Morehead State and he averages 20 points a game as a sophomore, it's probably not going to be at Morehead State for his entire career, whereas before he was. But I do wonder if you do start to see the power conference teams losing a little bit of that age part of it, which maybe allows mid-majors to hang around a little bit more. I don't know that it'll be as good as it was before, where you had, you know, Davidson. You look back at that 2008 tournament, Nick, Davidson was one of the better teams that Kansas played in that tournament. And that's even saying with North Carolina being a 1 seed that KU absolutely smashed, playing Memphis as well. Davidson's seed wasn't great. But if you watch Davidson playing the teams that were seeded better than Davidson, Davidson was better than those teams. And it wasn't just Steph Curry. Like, that was a really, really good mid-major team. A year or two after that, you get the Butler run in there, where Butler reaches, you know, back-to-back national title games, is a buzzer beater attempt away from from maybe winning a national title. I don't know that it's going to get back to that, but I do wonder as you start cycling through these guys that have their 35th year of eligibility, if it is going to even out a little bit, even if it never gets back to the quote-unquote mid-major glory days.
Well, and that's a great point about Butler. If Gordon Hayward was playing now, he would be playing at Purdue probably.
Yeah, exactly.
He would be playing at not Butler.
Right? Yeah,
like
Atlanta, Kansas, or somewhere. I mean, he would be noticed pretty quickly, and it would be very tough for Butler to retain him. And and the other thing too is, Nick, I'm interested to see sort of what the next level is with these portal salaries, because I'm not sure it's sustainable the way that it's currently going and the way guys are getting stuff. But I still feel like there is going to be a little bit of an inefficiency where guys are going to be more valuable to college teams than they are to NBA teams. And so maybe you get a guy, we've talked about Yaxel Lendenborg on our team as a guy that has a chance to get a guaranteed NBA contract, be a late first rounder, and go to the NBA. That's fine, but what if he's worth more to Michigan than that guaranteed contract, at least for a year? Does Michigan have a way now to get that guy back? Or get him to come to college? Obviously, he didn't play at Michigan this year. But I think that's also something to watch. You saw Kansas the last couple of years. Hunter Dickinson was making more at Kansas than he would have made for an NBA team. And I do think that that's going to be something to watch too, is sort of these guys that are maybe fringy NBA guys, but can be All-American and really good college guys, whether or not colleges say, hey, we'll pay you $2 million a year to come play here and stay in college, and whether that keeps those guys around a little bit longer than it did, say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, you can erase Yaxel Lendenborg off of your big board because he has committed to Michigan. So that's no end to
Michigan. I still think there's a pretty good chance that he doesn't play college ball next year.
Yeah, that is the weird thing. Like, you do have that situation where guys could transfer and then be like, actually, nah, NBA. Or vice versa. The scenarios are endless really at this point. But certainly the biggest news is for Kansas, they got Flory Bidunga back, and that is very significant. So huge news for Kansas, and now they have a chance to really springboard, I think, into more portal work, because the work in the portal is far, far from over. And as a reminder, if you want to hear us talking a little bit more in depth about Jaden Dawson and Trey White, the two current players that Kansas has committed to the transfer portal, highly encourage you to go check out that show from earlier in the weekend. We are going to be talking more KU football as well over the course of the remainder of spring football. We've got more spring position breakdowns we got to get through as well. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, you'll want to stay subscribed for all the latest transfer portal news as well, as guys commit, as things happen, as movement happens, because it's going to be continuing. The action's going to continue over the course of the coming weeks and probably the next month or 6 weeks or so. So you want to stay locked in. So stay subscribed on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jocks, KCSN, or Apple and Spotify. Continue to share some comments, drop your thoughts, and so on and so forth. Like the channel, do all that good stuff. Stay connected with the show, and we really appreciate your support as always. So, but until next time, Kevin, you got anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I think we hit a whole bunch on this one. Good show, Nick.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. Great show, Kevin. Good job. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. If you did, again, like, subscribe, comment, share your thoughts. But until next time, he's Kevin Flaherty. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure, very soon, with potentially more breaking news updates and so on and so forth. So until then, we'll talk to you again very soon, and see ya.